In his book What Went Wrong, 7/7 The London Bombs, former terrorist analyst Crispin Black made public the long-standing tradition known as the Covenant of Security. This was where the British government put known terrorists and radicals above the law, in an agreement that they would only attack foreign targets and not the UK itself.
The surprise to many Londoners is that the capital had not been targeted before. One of the reasons is that through much of the previous decade, the capital had become a haven for foreign jihadis. It was as if there were an unspoken deal. We don't arrest them and they don't attack us. Some Muslims called it a covenant of security, that if you're a guest in a country, you don't do it harm.
It was one of those you leave us alone, we leave you alone kind of things.
Today, the public face of this agreement is Islam for UK leader Anjem Choudary. Although he is generally considered an annoying hypocrite rather than a serious threat like his predecessors, the media use him as a pawn for their talking points when the establishment needs to build up hate for Islam and support for the Middle Eastern wars. A common tactic used by the tabloids to sell newspapers is to harp on about how the government pay him benefits, which is always a good way to rile up the working class Brits or the pompous middle classes. It's then ironic that the government pay him and the media then ends up getting revenue from his inconsistent yet antagonistic speeches. It wasn't long ago that he preferred to be called Andy, smoked pot and drank alcohol. How very Islamic. Then, sometime during university, which is common ground for MI5 recruitment, he suddenly began vouching for Islamic law and popped up on television. The fact that he gets so much TV time and news coverage should tell us that he's more of an actor suckering in the audience for the establishment agenda than a real radical Muslim preacher. After all, why would the BBC, which is as close to a government media organisation as you can get, put a radical Muslim preacher on TV on the day of 9/11?
The actions which took place today are not really the focus point for us. I think what we need to do is we need to look to why people are targeting American interests. Why have people taken the stance that we need to attack the Pentagon, we need to attack the political and the economic and the strategic locations and really inflict damage upon the American government? And I think it's got something to do with the fact that America continues to have their forces in the Middle East. America continues to back tyrant regimes, and I think that this should be a lesson not only for the American regime but also to the Muslims worldwide, to say that we need to have a different type of relationship, a relationship based on debate and discussion.
Jonathan Clark in Washington, is America going to learn the sort of lesson Mr. Choudary wants it to?
Whether knowingly or unknowingly, Anjem Choudary has become a talking head for the Western world order. He's done more in recent years to support the government and media agenda of the West than he's done to support his own people. On the day of 9/11, before any kind of investigation had taken place as to who had carried out the attacks, he was there conveniently on BBC, cementing the theory that it was Muslims that hate the West. Why would somebody who claims to represent the Muslim community support a theory that would cause millions of people to hate Islam?
You can't say that that's a conspiracy. That's a coincidence.
Label off the street coming and saying
That's
that
a
there's some sort of connection.
Somebody was running
I don't know what we're talking about here because I didn't see.
There's a lot of proof actually. With 9/11, the proof is ridiculous.
There are some people who believe that they just popped into this world and there's no creator for the heavens and the earth.
Yeah,
But
I don't know if you ascribe to that conspiracy theory.
I used to.
But obviously we must believe that we've been created by someone who created us.
In order for the British people to support illegal wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, they need a constant visual enemy to unite against. Thanks to the sensational mainstream media, that enemy is Anjem Choudary and Islam for UK. All they have to do to boost patriotism of the country is wheel out Anjem Choudary to bash the troops.
Then I have to go to Afghanistan. And when was an excuse for someone to kill someone innocent and then say, well, actually, I'm just following orders? You wouldn't accept that for your family. Why should we accept that? The occupying forces are committing atrocities even outside of the ambit and the rules of what the British Army lay down for themselves.
Whether there's a conspiracy or not, the result is the same. The EDL lead a campaign against the Islamists. The UAF then hate the EDL. And while everybody is distracted and divided, wars continue and more of our freedom is taken away by the government and bureaucrats. A good percentage of Chowdary's criticisms are fair arguments, but because he's saying them and it's on the mainstream news, he monopolises that viewpoint. The same way that if you believe we should scale back immigration, dislike the EU superstate, or are sceptical about climate change, you might be associated with the BNP and be called a far-right fascist. This establishment media tactic of mixing truth, like torture and the crimes of British troops, with a man that is considered a Muslim extremist is called the turd in the punch bowl. Legitimate ideas become spoiled and the public only see the turd. While we can only speculate that Choudary is a fake leader working for MI5 to maybe keep extremists in a holding pot and to promote wartime patriotism, it's not beyond the BBC to use propaganda or even work at the behest of the intelligence agencies.
It's had very strong control of the national media in the UK. There's no doubt about that. In fact, MI6 has a section called Information Operations, which is called IOPS, purely there to manipulate the media. In the 1970s, there was a committee called the D-Notice Committee, which was made up of senior journalists in the UK, and it was there to officially protect national security. But effectively, it meant that it was there to block stories about intelligence activity and operations by MI5 and MI6. So it's a bit of a strange concept that we can have the media effectively doing the bidding of the spies in this country.
Could the intelligence agencies be manipulating radical Muslim leaders under the covenant of security, ensuring that they get news coverage in order to keep the threat of Muslim extremism in the public consciousness? We may never know. What we do know is Chowdary's predecessors in the Al-Mujahiroon group were intimately linked to the intelligence agencies through the covenant of security right up until the day of 7/7. Much like bin Laden had ties to the US government up until the day of 9/11.